Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you, Maverick family, for being here, and new viewers. New deal for Ukraine. New arms deal. And while Trump threatens Russia after meeting with the Secretary General of NATO today at the White House, we'll have the details on that and the comments. We also are following Pierre Poilievre, conservative leader. Well, sort of pending. He held a news conference today to hold Mark Carney's feet to the fire over his potential, his perceived conflicts of interest. We'll drop into that. And what else do we have for you? I'm going to talk a little. Well, I created something, and I'm going to share that with you at the end of the program. It's related to the Superman movie. Again, we're not going to get too deep into that, but I have something special to share with you at the end of the broadcast. So you're going to want to stick around for that, I hope. And we'll start digging into the top news stories of the day on the other side of this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
All right. So Trump said that he was going to have a big announcement today. And indeed, it was a pretty big announcement. Another shift. I think a change that Vladimir Putin probably was not expecting when he began his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So today, President Trump met with NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte at the White House to finalize a major arms deal aimed at supporting Ukraine in its ongoing conflict with Russia. During the meeting, Trump announced a deal to supply billions of dollars worth of U.S.-made weapons, including advanced Patriot missile defense systems, to NATO allies for distribution to Ukraine. Trump emphasized that NATO member countries will cover the full cost of the weapons, stating, quote, "We're sending weapons to NATO, and NATO is paying for those weapons, 100%. So this arrangement, described as a very big deal by both Trump and Rutte, allows Ukraine to receive critical military support while boosting U.S. defense industries. And of course, we know that Ukraine is under intense attack, has been for the past couple of weeks, with Russia really stepping up missile and drone attacks against major Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv, massive drone attacks. In some cases, we've seen as many as 500 drones launched in a single evening against really mostly civilian targets. So today, Trump, out of frustration with Putin, held this meeting with Rutte at the White House and announced this deal, which clearly has been in the works for, well, at least weeks anyway. Here we go.
A friend of mine who's become very friendly over the last number of years. We knew each other before, but Mark is the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO. Highly respected by everybody that knows him, but in particular the European countries have great reliance on him. And he's done a fantastic job. And We had a tremendous meeting. I guess it's about a month now, a month ago. And I think Mark will tell you that it was really perhaps more important the date of November 5th. That was the election day. Maybe that was the most important because we made tremendous progress together. And one of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. That's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. But regardless, we are going to be we make the greatest military equipment in the world, whether it's missiles. You saw that recently in Iran, the way those planes flew in. They hit every single, 14 bombs hit every target. Then you had the helicopters shoot a total of 30 bombs, 30 missiles, and they hit every single, Marco, is that right? Every single, Pete, every single target. And it was, I guess, on a scale of 0 to 10, they say it was about a 15. That's how successful it was. That's how lethal it was, a word they like to use nowadays. But it was an amazing, well-organized attack that people in this country want to do for 24 years. You know, when we had the pilots in last week, they were saying, sir, we've been practicing this for 24 years, meaning people, not them, but other people that are a little older now. But they too, and you were the one that let us do it. But we've been practicing it 3 to 4 times a year for 22, 24 years, because they always knew they hadn't stopped Iran from doing what they were doing, which is trying to come up with a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And we did it very successfully. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We are not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot of money, and we don't want to do anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinating. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO. So we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months. And if you could say a few words.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You called me on Thursday that you had taken a decision And the decision is that you want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you don't want Europeans to pay for it, which is totally logical. And this is building on the tremendous success of the NATO summit, the 5%, but also the decision to keep Ukraine strong and the decision to increase our defense industrial production. So based on that, that was Europe stepping up. This is again Europeans stepping up. So I've been in contact with many countries. I can tell you that at this moment, Germany massively, but also Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Norway, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Canada, they all want to be part of this. And this is only the first wave. There will be more. So what we will do is work through the NATO systems to make sure that we know what Ukrainians need, so that we can make packages. Of course, in a way, we discussed it this morning with Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, in a way that, of course, the US will keep on its stockpiles necessary to defend this country. That's absolutely clear. But it will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment, both for air defense, but also missiles, ammunition, etc., etc. So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you are planning to do in 50 days, and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for them. So I really want to thank you for that, and it means the Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, it might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine, and then the US later backfilling it, because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job, and it's a really great job. We've been very successful in settling wars. You have India, Pakistan, you have Rwanda and the Congo. That was going on for 30 years. India, by the way, and Pakistan would have been a nuclear war within another week, the way that was going. That was going very badly, and we did that through trade. I said, we're not going to talk to you about trade unless you get this thing settled, and they did, and they were both great leaders, and they were great. But Rwanda and the Congo, that was going on for 30 years, and at least 7 million people killed, and killed with a lot of pretty rough weapons like machetes, heads chopped off, going on for many years. You couldn't even get near the countries. Nobody wanted to get near. It's so frightening. And we got that one solved. Serbia, Kosovo, got that solved. That was going to be one that was going to happen. And again, that was something I use. I use trade for a lot of things, but it's great for settling wars. That was really very important. We're working, Marco is working very hard with everybody here on the Strip, the Gaza Strip. I call it the Gaza Strip, one of the worst real estate deals ever made. They gave up the oceanfront property, one of the worst deals ever made. But it was supposed to bring peace, and it didn't bring peace. It brought the opposite. But we're doing pretty well on Gaza. Steve Witkoff is here, and I think we could have something fairly soon to talk about. And we solved other one. One that we just seem to have, Armenia and Azerbaijan. It looks like that's going to come to a conclusion, successful conclusion. We worked on Egypt with their next door neighbor who is a good neighbor. They're friends of mine, but they happened to build a dam which closed up water going into a thing called the Nile. I think if I'm Egypt, I want to have water in the Nile, and we're working on that one. It's a problem, but it's going to get solved. They built one of the biggest dams in the world, a little bit outside of Egypt. You know about that? You've been hearing about that one. And that turned out to be a big problem. I don't know. I think the United States funded the dam. I don't know why they didn't solve the problem before they built the dam. But it's nice when the Nile River has water. It's a very important source of income and life. It's the life of Egypt. And to take that away is pretty incredible. But we think we're going to have that solved very quickly. So we do good. The only one we haven't been able to get to yet is Russia. And I'm not happy. And I will tell you that Ukraine wants to do something. Again, it's a war that should have never started. If I were president, it never would have happened. I used to speak to President Putin about it a lot. It was the apple of his eye. But once I saw what was going on, I said, you know, they're gonna have a war here. I was outside, election was rigged, and I was outside looking in, and I said, you know, that thing's gonna be a war. Couldn't believe it, because what Biden said was the exact opposite of what should have been said. And it started, and it's a real mess. We're losing, I guess they're losing 5,000 or 6,000 people a day. It's actually now more. I was saying 5,000 a day. It's actually more now. Mostly soldiers, but a lot of people in cities and towns that are getting blown up too. It's a horrible war, and it should be stopped. And so if it's not done, if we don't have an agreement in 50 days, that's what we're doing. Secondary tariffs, and they're biting. And I hope we don't get to the point where we do, but I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev and kill 60 people. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. But the purpose of this is to say that this is a very big deal we've made. This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield. Ukraine will take it up. And, you know, say what you want about Ukraine. When the war started, they had no chance. And they still would have had no chance if the equipment, they had the best equipment, because we do make the best planes and missiles, and we make the best military equipment in the world by far. And we have new things coming out that are beyond belief. And I'm very excited about the Golden Dome. It's going to give us very strong protection. We've already started that. But they had courage, because somebody has to use that equipment. And they fought with tremendous courage, and they continue to fight with tremendous courage. But they don't have, they're losing on equipment, and Russia's really taken a very positive, very strong, I mean, what they've done the last couple of weeks.
Without military reasons. So what they are doing is 700 drones a day, missiles, bombing cities. This is not because of military goals. It is just creating panic, keeping people out of their sleeps, hitting towns. It's really terrible, and it is meaning a lot of people lose their lives, but also the infrastructure, whole cities being
destroyed. They're wiping out the electric. It's going to take years to rebuild it. That's going to be the next problem. Because, but that's going to take a long time. Cities, many of the cities are knocked down to the ground. Many of the people have left, but many have stayed. I don't know. They actually stay. And most have stayed. Actually, it's incredible that they stay, and knowing that a missile could be hitting your apartment house, and your apartment house that you're sitting in could collapse on top of you. And they do very heavy construction. They don't use rebar. They do very thick concrete construction. Those are heavy buildings, big buildings. And heavy buildings, and they collapse like they're made out of paper. It's unbelievable to see this happening with people, so many people being killed. So we think we're going to make progress, and we hope we're going to make progress. In the meantime, we're going to get you good service on what you need. And we really became friendly with NATO this last meeting. You know, we went from 2% to 5%, which everyone said was not even a possibility. They weren't paying 2%. Many of them were paying much less than 2%.
But even those, since you became president, all committed to the 2% before the summit. And now collectively we committed to the 5%.
That's right, they did. They've been very good. And I think I made a lot of friends over there. We had a couple of days of very intensive talks. And they're great people. They're leaders of countries. Leaders of countries.
I'm letting this roll because this is actually
some of them smaller countries, but
a milestone
for
moment.
the most part, that's a very solid, strong
this
country.
Is
and
a pivotal
very
moment,
successful.
I
Some
think,
of them
in
are
this
among the most successful countries in the world.
war.
So that's the story. We hope that's going to have an impact on Vladimir Putin, and we hope it's going to have an impact on Ukraine also. We want to make sure that Ukraine does what they have to do. All of a sudden they may feel emboldened, and maybe they don't want. You know, this is a very difficult situation.
Ukraine wants a peace deal.
I think so.
And they will stay committed to that. There's no doubt. They want it. But the Russians have to become
They
serious.
have to continue to want it, though.
Yeah, I agree. But you and I will make sure of that.
All of a sudden they get no.
You and I will make sure of that.
We'll make sure. I feel confident that they will do what has to be done. Plus, we have certain parameters that both sides know, and we already know what should be done. So I think that's going to be it's going to be very strong. We want everlasting peace. Any questions, please? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. What was the tipping point for you in making this decision? Was it a conversation with President why are you giving 50 more days?
I think well, I think it's a very short period of time. I think, don't forget, I've just really been involved in this for not very long, and it wasn't initial focus. This is a Biden war. This is a Democrat war, not a Republican or Trump war. This is a war that would have never happened. It shouldn't have happened. A lot of people being killed. When the final numbers come in, you're going to see a lot more people are being killed in this war than you think, than you've been writing about. It's a very deadly war. They're all bad, but this is a very deadly war. The numbers are going to be far greater. When an apartment house comes down, and they say 2 people were slightly injured. No, many people were killed, and those numbers will be at some point accurately reported. So far, they're not. It's a deadly war. I think that you're just going to see. I think you're going to see strong movement. I hope so. I hope so. You know, the secondary tariffs are very, very powerful.
What about the tariffs that the Republicans in the House and the Senate have ready?
Yeah,
500%.
sure.
Why are you doing 100%?
Well, the Republicans are moving very strongly in the Senate, giving us total control of it. But I'm not sure we need it, but it's certainly good that they're doing it. And Lindsey Graham's working hard. The whole John Thune, all of them, they're all working hard, and they're in coordination with Mike Johnson, Speaker in the House. And I think they've actually crafted a pretty good piece of legislation. It's probably going to pass very easily, and that includes Democrats. And there's some little tweaks, but I don't want to say I don't need it because I don't want them to waste their time. It could be very useful. We'll have to see. But we can do secondary. We're probably talking about 100% or something like that. We can do secondary tariffs without the Senate, without the House. But what they're crafting also could be very good.
So are you suggesting then that the Congress should move forward with those sanctions, the 500%, and that your 100 would be a separate additional package?
Yeah, I mean, the 500 is, sort of meaningless after a while because at a certain point it doesn't matter. It's not going to be, 100. 100 is going to serve the same function. But, yeah, I have it at 100%. They may have it, I don't know what they're going to end up with. They may have it at 100 too. They may have it at 500. But they're doing some good work in the House, and I think in the House and the Senate. And as you know, they're coordinated, and they can have it done quickly. They said they'll have it as quickly as I need it. So we'll see. We're talking to him. In fact, John Thune's coming over later on to talk. Yeah, he's gonna come over and talk.
Mr. President, isn't it your view that Vladimir Putin mischaracterized his dedication?
What?
Is it your view that Vladimir Putin
Did he misguide us?
Did not clarify his intention.
Yeah.
To appease
Well.
And what happens now in the next phase?
You're going to see. I mean, we're going to go for a period of time. Maybe he'll start negotiating. I think I felt, I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt that we had a deal about 4 times. Mm-hmm. And here we are, still talking about
and he didn't send serious people to the negotiations. So I remember that you were able, with Marco Rubio and with Steve Witkoff, to get these talks going in Istanbul.
Yep.
I remember I was myself in Turkey for NATO business in May, and we really put pressure on the Ukrainians to send a senior team into Istanbul, and they did. But then the Russians came up with this historian explaining history of Russia since 1250.
We thought, and I thought, we should have had a deal done a long time ago. But it just keeps going on and on and on, and every night people are dying. A lot of people, a lot of Russian soldiers are dying, by the way, and a lot of Ukrainian soldiers too. But a lot of Russian soldiers are dying.
100,000 Russian soldiers since 1st of January. Since January, 100,000 Russian soldiers dead since January. So if anybody in Moscow is listening to this, again, 100,000 dead Russians since January. This is what President Putin is doing at the moment.
Yeah, please.
Will these be Patriot missiles specifically, or Patriot batteries that you're finding?
Everything. It's everything. It's Patriots. It's all of them. It's a full complement with the batteries. Yeah.
When do you expect them to arrive?
Well, we're going to have some come very soon, within days, actually, because a couple of the countries that have Patriots are going to swap over and will replace the Patriots with the ones they have, and Matt will coordinate with NATO But so it's going to be, they're going to start arriving very soon.
And this afternoon, Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, is visiting Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and we'll discuss also, I think, on this whole Patriot thing. Norway is involved, so that's on the Patriots, but this whole deal is also about missiles, about ammunition, so it's broader than Patriots.
We have one country that has 17 Patriots getting ready to be shipped. They're not going to need them for them. So we're going to work a deal where the 17 will go, or a big portion of the 17 will go to the war side.
Mr. President.
And that can be done very quickly.
Mr. President.
Still going to stick with
please.
this.
Could this transaction with NATO be viewed as a step towards achieving peace, letting Putin know that now Zelensky has a little bit more powerful tools in his tool chest, and maybe that brings him to the table to achieve peace? I know that you
Yeah.
want to do that.
Brian, that's what we've been saying. I think you might have expressed it better if you want another two. That's exactly what.
That was a summary.
That was a nice summary. I think he's done better than us. He's a very good guy, I can tell you that. But no, it's well said. Yeah, I think this is a chance at getting peace. Or it's just going to be the same thing. And I have to tell you, Europe has a lot of spirit for this war. A lot of people, when I first got involved, I really didn't think they did, but they do. And I saw that a month ago when you were there, many of you were there. The level of esprit de corps, spirit that they have is amazing. They really think it's a very, very important thing to do, or they wouldn't be doing it. Look, they're agreeing to, they're paying for everything. We're not paying anymore. We have an ocean separating us. I said, we have a problem. We make the best stuff, but we can't keep doing this. And Biden should have done this years ago. He should have done it from the beginning, but he didn't. He didn't know he was there. This guy, what a horrible job they did for this country. And I just hope between the border and this and so many other, inflation, what a horrible administration. The worst administration in history, in my opinion. It's not my opinion. I think it's everybody's opinion. But this is something that shouldn't have happened, and we're going to see if we can end it.
If I could follow up.
I do want to make one statement. Again, I said it before. This is not Trump's war. We're here to try and get it finished and settled and whatever. Because nobody wins with this. This is a loser from every standpoint.
But from day
This
one.
was Biden, and this was other people. And it's very sad. It's a very sad situation. This gentleman's doing a great job. I think he's going to get it, and Matt and everybody else that's working on it. I think he'll get this thing over with, hopefully.
Mr.
Yeah.
President, you've praised European countries today as standing up for Ukraine as being strong. Will you allow them to continue to negotiate tariffs lower than 30% before August 1st, or is the deal settled?
What does that mean? You mean you're talking about the tariffs? Oh, you're back on tariffs. You're on a more friendly tariff, right? A little bit more friendly tariff. No, we're going to be talking to people. We have, I watched a show this morning. They were talking about, well, when's he going to make the deal? The deals are already made. The letters are the deals. The deals are made. There are no deals to make. They would like to do a different kind of a deal, and we're always open to talk. We are open to talk, including to Europe. In fact, they're coming over. They'd like to talk to us.
Mr. President, is there any concern about the U.S. stockpiles? There was a pause in delivery of weaponry to Ukraine in order to evaluate, apparently, U.S. stockpiles. What came out of that?
Evaluation. I mean, this was a very big, what we're talking about today is a very, very big day. And what Pete was doing, and me too, I knew what Pete was doing, was evaluation, because we knew this was going to happen. And now we actually announced it. They voted on it. It's all been done. So obviously that has a big impact on, when you say pause, obviously you're not going to be doing things if you don't know what's going to happen here. But we were pretty sure this was going to happen, so we did a little bit of a pause. But this is a very big event today. This is something very big.
If the war escalates further, how far are you willing to go in response?
In what?
How far are you willing to go if Putin were to escalate, send more bombs?
Don't ask me a question like that. How far? I don't know. I want to get the war settled. They're not Americans that are dying in it, and I have a problem, and JD has a problem. It's a stance that he's had for a long time. They're not Americans dying, but there are a lot of people dying, and on something that should be able to be settled, and we all agree with that. This group of people, that, want to defend our country. But, you know, ultimately, having a strong Europe is a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, please, in the back.
Yeah, is there a ceiling on what the Europeans are willing to pay for? And it sounds like, well, are you ruling out the U.S. paying for some from the conditional weapons to withdraw that authority?
Shall I try to answer
Please.
that? Because basically what the president is saying, that he is willing, of course, taking consideration what the US needs itself. So it's not that you can have a shopping list and you can order whatever you want, because the US has to make sure that the US keeps his hand on what the US needs, also to keep the whole world safe, because in the end you are the police agent of the whole world. You are the most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful military on earth. But given that, the US has decided to indeed massively supply Ukraine with what is necessary through NATO. Europeans 100% paying for that. And what we have been doing over the last couple of days is talking with countries, and I just mentioned the ones who in a first wave immediately said, we want to chip in. And then you are really talking about big numbers. Take Germany visiting today, they are really talking about big numbers.
I will say that I spoke with Germany, spoke with most of the larger countries, and they are really enthusiastic about this. They want to, and you know, they're willing to go very far. I will tell you, you know, as per your question, how far would I go? They want to go very far. They don't want this to happen. That's why I think from Putin's standpoint, it would really be good. He gets the country, his economy is doing very poorly, and he's got to get his economy back. He's got to save his economy. He could save his country in a sense, but the economy can be destroyed. He's destroyed a lot of countries over the years. He wants to get that economy back. And, you know, he's got a great country for trading and other things. If they could use the assets instead of war, he's got some tremendous potential. That's what I would say.
How did you deliver this news to Putin, sir?
Say it?
How did you tell Putin this was coming?
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. I say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I go home, I tell the First Lady, you know, I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit. So it's like, look, he's, I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me. But what I do say is that at a certain point, you know, ultimately talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action. It's got to be results. And I hope he does it. It's potentially such a great country to be wasting so many people on this and the money. And look at what's happened to his economy. Look at what's happened. So,
And with the threat in 50 days,
yeah,
the economy will be hit very hard.
I mean, look, I hope he's going to do it. He knows the deal. He knows what a fair deal is. If there is such a thing as a fair deal, there's no winners here. This is a loser. This is a loser. And I dealt with him from the beginning. And it wouldn't have happened, but I will say Ukraine was the apple of his eye. We talk about it. It was the apple of his eye, but it wasn't going to happen. And he understood that. It wasn't going to happen. And then I noticed, after I was out, I noticed soldiers forming at the border.
Yeah.
And then I heard horrible, stupid things being said from the other side. And I said, they're really handling it very, very wrong. It's a shame. Yeah.
Can I say one thing, and that is about President Trump, because you came in office in January. On the 12th of February, you had your first phone call with Putin. I think you did exactly what I hope you would do. That is breaking the deadlock, starting the conversation, because you have to test him. I know Putin very well from the days when I was Prime Minister in the Netherlands. You have to test him. And you did this, and you really gave him a chance to be serious, to get to the table, to start negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, we all tried to help you. But you've now come to a point where you say, well, hey...
We actually thought we had probably 4 times a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you were called and you said, this looks good.
Yeah.
And then the deal wouldn't happen because bombs would be thrown out that night and you'd say, we're not making any deals. It was like...
But you breaking the deadlock was crucial because you had to start that process. And you were the only one who was able to do that.
I think we'll get it done.
Do you think he's reasonable enough to negotiate?
Yeah, I think we're going to get it done. I think, look, this is a very powerful situation. You have very wealthy countries buying the best equipment in the world. And we have the best equipment in the world. We make equipment like no other. You know, our submarines, nuclear submarines, are so powerful. They're the most powerful weapon ever built. And we have the best in the world by, they're 20 years behind, 25 years behind us. We have the greatest equipment anywhere in the world. I just hope we don't have to use it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a separate topic here, President Biden, of all people, spoke to the New York Times over the weekend. He did not speak to them on the record during his time in office at all. He spoke to them recently. And he defended his use of the auto pen and said that he signed off on every decision. But at the same time, the Times reports that he did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applies to large numbers of people. What are your take on that? Any new revelations from?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the auto pen. Look, the auto pen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal. And I know the people on the other side of the, see that desk, that Resolute desk? Unfortunately, he used it before me. But, you know, we have our choice of 7 desks. They're all beautiful. But I chose the Resolute, and so did he, unfortunately. But the people on the other side of the Resolute desk, I know them. Lisa, the whole group, and they're no good. They're sick people. And I guarantee he knew nothing about what he was signing. I guarantee it. So they're going to figure it out, and we'll see what happens. But to me, the auto pen, you know, you elected president. You know what the auto pen is supposed to do? Sign thousands of letters from young people that write. We get thousands of letters a week, Susie, right? Thousands. I mean, tens of thousands sometimes. I look at a room, there's a room where we have many, many people working, responding and sending letters back. That's what an auto pen's supposed to be. To write to a young 7-year-old boy that writes to the president, and he wants to be president someday, and he loves America. That's what the auto pen's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be for signing major legislation and all of the things. No, the auto pen, and I doubt he knew. I doubt they even spoke to him about it. I think they had, it's called a freewheeling auto pen. Like, Biden was never for open borders. Biden was never for transgender for everyone. So I don't think I think the radical left people that took over the White House, and if I didn't win, our country was finished. You know, when I was in, and I said this a couple of times, I hope I don't bore you with it, but when I was in Saudi Arabia, I was in Qatar, I was in UAE, and then I met with all of your leaders, yes, including you, a great leader. He's now the leader of many countries, not just
No.
But I met with a lot of leaders over the last 2 months in the Middle East and all of the NATO countries. And I will tell you, they had one common phrase. They thought America was dead 1 year ago. And today they say, and they all say it, and I hope you'll back me up in this, but they say now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. It is. Look at our numbers. Look at the numbers we made. You see, we made $25 billion last month. We didn't make that for years. The tariffs are kicking in. The economy is very strong, even though we have a Fed person who's terrible. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, but that's all right. We blow through interest rates. We're doing so well, we blow through it. Be nice because people would be able to buy housing a lot easier. But think of it. We thought your country was dead. And they were dealing with China because they were really going to China, but not anymore. But we thought your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. So we've done a really good job, and it's an honor to have this man. This man is a star, and he's going to be dealing with another one of my stars, Matt, and you're going to do a great job, Matt Whitaker. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
All right. We stuck with that right to the end. And I think that it does mark a pivotal moment, but it still shows that well, what we're getting here is still mixed messaging. He is providing the arms, but for him, it's business. And even though you're seeing him express his frustration with Putin because he's been given something of a wake-up call here and has been slapped upside the head with a dose of reality, he's still not really willing to deliver maximum pressure. Still waiting 50 days, providing a 50-day deadline, a threat against Russia before imposing these heavy sanctions that he is saying he will impose if Putin doesn't show that he's serious about making progress toward peace. 50 days, another 50 days. But the Patriot missiles in particular being released, provided, paid for by other NATO countries, and they are expensive. I think that a single Patriot missile costs about $4 million. So certainly not cost effective in combating drones. So they will need to use other measures to bring those drones down because they only cost thousands a piece, not millions. So you can't send a $4 million missile after every drone when they're launching 500 or more drones a night against Ukrainian cities. You can't then fire back 500 $4 million missiles to take those out. But missiles against missiles, yeah, they need these Patriot batteries and the ammunition to defend the skies over Ukraine. And it is civilian targets that are being hit. And I think that is one of the main reasons Trump has decided to approve this, because it's civilians who have been under fire. It is civilians, as he indicated here in the news conference, that are suffering and dying. So yeah, it is a major pivotal moment. Stay with me when we come back. Pierre Poilievre on immigration and Mark Carney's conflicts of interest.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so Volodymyr Zelensky today in Kyiv met, I believe, with Keith Kellogg, Trump's envoy, and he has described what is going on as productive, and I think he's expressing gratitude for the renewed support. And the deal here, of course, marks this notable shift in Trump's approach as he seeks to balance support for Ukraine with his push for European allies to shoulder more financial responsibility. We still don't have those specific weapons and delivery timelines. We don't have all those details at this point. So still some questions lingering around this whole thing. we'll continue to follow it in the days and weeks ahead as the countdown begins on this 50-day deadline. Interesting to note, too, that Alexander Dugin, the philosopher and ultranationalist in Russia, known as Putin's brain, is now saying that he has posted on social media today that Russia now has just 50 days to wrap up what it wants to do in Ukraine, and that appears to be to take over the country. He said, quote, "We have 50 days to finish everything that we haven't finished." He says, saying that Trump's threat to impose secondary sanctions on countries that import Russian energy products like India and China is serious. And so make no mistake that, Dugin does have more influence with Putin than many people would like to recognize. And we'll see where it goes. That's all we can do because Trump is very unpredictable. But the reason I think this is a major pivot is because now it's business. Now it's a deal. Now the U.S. is literally profiteering off the war in Ukraine. I'm not sure if that's a good look for the United States. I'm not even sure if I'm pretty sure it doesn't put the United States on moral high ground here at all. Nevertheless, the aid is the aid is the aid, and Ukraine will benefit from this. Europe will pay for it, and they jointly share concerns about security and Russian encroachment on their territory, which is the opposite, point of view from those who believe that the major reason for this whole conflict is NATO expansionism. And while that may be an issue, it certainly is not justification. So, all that while we see Canada also pivoting toward Europe, both for trade and defense. And then we see Pierre Poilievre holding a news conference today. He doubled down on his call for drastic immigration cuts, addressing other key issues as he campaigns to regain a seat in Parliament. Poilievre reiterated his push for very hard caps on immigration. It's interesting to see him shift his narrative toward the immigration issue. Certainly a different tone as he campaigns to just gain a seat to get elected in a riding out in Alberta. It's a different tone, a different campaign than what he ran nationally. The talking points are different. The tone is different. So these hard caps that he wants to put on immigration, he's arguing that Canada's population growth has outpaced its ability to provide housing, jobs, and healthcare. Today, he stated that, quote, "In order to fix the problem, we've got to put very hard caps on immigration levels." Let me just pull that down. And he says we need more people leaving than coming for the next couple of years into Canada while Canada catches up. He blamed the Liberal government's policies for straining public services and driving up costs, claiming that the influx of newcomers has overwhelmed Canada's infrastructure. Poilievre emphasized that immigration should prioritize the right people and the right numbers to put Canada first, still using the Canada First slogan. And beyond immigration, Poilievre criticized Prime Minister Mark Carney's approach to trade negotiations with the United States today, warning that setting a deadline for a deal hands leverage to U.S. President Donald Trump. And the 21st is the deadline that was agreed upon between Carney and Trump when they met at the G7 conference. Poilievre urged the Liberals to secure a trade agreement swiftly to avoid looming tariffs, suggesting Canada could have used its digital services tax as a bargaining chip. But of course, that's what we're seeing on the public side. We also know that Carney and his team not bargaining or negotiating in public, unlike Trump, who is doing everything in a very public way. So it's hard to get a real bead on exactly where these negotiations sit. Now, Poilievre also touched on economic challenges today, accusing the Liberals of fueling homelessness through overspending and lax immigration policies. He called for a reversal of the last decade's policies to restore affordability and opportunity for Canadians. And today as well, he lashed out at the Prime Minister on this issue of conflict of interest, which surfaced over the weekend again as Mark Carney revealed more details on his investments. Let's pick up this news conference now with Pierre Poilievre, pending leader of the
be here today once again reiterating that our purpose as Conservatives is to restore the promise of Canada that anyone who works hard can get a good, affordable life in a nice house on a safe street, that your success is determined by your hard work, not by government favoritism, that this is a meritocracy, not an aristocracy, where the government works for the working class, for the seniors, and for everyday people who build this country every single day. And that can only happen if the Prime Minister is focused on the public interest rather than on private interests. On Friday, we finally got a look at the Prime Minister's many financial interests that he kept carefully hidden throughout the election and about which he told numerous falsehoods during that same campaign. And so these are what the revelations tell us. One, that Mr. Carney was not upfront or honest with Canadians during the election. He made numerous false statements he would have known were false when he made them. Two, there is a cornucopia of conflicts of interest in these investments, like we have never seen before from a Canadian Prime Minister. Let me go through and document all of these claims one by one. First of all, during the election campaign, Mr. Carney said, and I quote, "I own nothing but cash and personal real estate, and that's not going to change in public life." Well, it turns out, while he said that, he knowingly owned 574 stocks and deferred profits and stock options in Brookfield and other companies. So it was patently and now provably false for him to say he owned nothing but cash and real estate. Two, my assets are now in a blind trust, so I don't know what exactly is in there. That too is false. He must have known what was in that blind trust because he was the one that filled out the paperwork for the Ethics Commissioner to report those holdings. So he knew exactly what was in his blind trust, and he just did not want Canadians to know before they went to the polls. Finally, he said, and I quote, "I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management." Well, it turns out that he has continuing stock options and deferred share units in Brookfield Asset Management. And these options cannot be sold, or at least not easily, and we have no reason to believe they have been. So when he said that he had no connection to Brookfield, he was stating a patent falsehood. Now, why should we care? Why should Canadians care about this? Well, Mr. Carney has shown in the past his willingness to use his political connections in order to profit himself. For example, he said, let me see here, he gave public endorsement of Westinghouse in the leaders' debate. Westinghouse is a nuclear energy company which Brookfield is invested in. He has announced he's going to spend billions of dollars on modular homes. Brookfield is invested in modular homes. He says he wants to subsidize heat pumps. Brookfield is invested in heat pumps. He says that jet fuel, in the past he has said that he helped influence regulatory changes forcing aviation companies to buy certain kinds of jet fuel that one of his companies was invested in, so that air passengers have to pay more for their airline ticket to subsidize this specialty jet fuel that profits a company in which Mr. Carney had a financial interest. And the list of potential conflicts goes on and on. How can he possibly be involved in developing a budget when all the tax policies could impact on his investments directly or indirectly? How could he address things like competition policy when his companies might be impacted? Then there's, for example, the digital services tax. The digital services tax is paid by some of the companies that he is invested in. and therefore he has a potential or perceived conflict of interest in that as well. So Conservatives are calling for two things today. One, we call on the Prime Minister to come before you and explain the contradiction. How is it that he was telling Canadians that he only had real estate and cash when he knowingly had stock options and other deferred benefits? How is it that he claimed he didn't know it was in his blind trust when we now learn that he knew exactly what was in that trust? And how is it that he said that he had no financial interest in Brookfield when he knew exactly that he had stock options and deferred share units? Finally, so we want him to explain why he told Canadians the opposite of the truth during the election campaign. Second, we're calling on the Prime Minister to sell his investments, turn them into cash, hand them to a trustee who can invest them in a way that is completely blind to him, so that he does not have any knowledge of what he owns. That is the spirit of a blind trust. A blind trust is meant to be something that the owner does not know anything about. That's what it means to be blind of the assets. But right now, Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds, because even we know what he holds due to this disclosure. And this will put him in an impossible position where he will be conflicted at every turn. So either he will have to get up 3 or 4 times every cabinet meeting to avoid stumbling over the 100+ potential conflicts that the Ethics Commissioner has identified, or he will act in the cabinet to potentially favor his own interests. Neither of those possibilities is acceptable. And so, again, we call for him to explain the falsehoods, sell his holdings, end the conflicts, work for Canadians. We need a Prime Minister whose only purpose is serving the Canadian people, to reverse the massive damage Liberals have done, to reverse the out-of-control immigration, inflation, crime, debt, and our spiraling economy. Now, here we are, a Prime Minister who's going to be constantly distracted by his private interests when the public interest is in such desperate need of attention. Look at how bad things are in Canada today, and getting worse. The debt is growing faster under Mark Carney than it was under Justin Trudeau. Mr. Carney is spending more in his first budget bill, his first financial bill, spending more than Justin Trudeau was spending. The deficit looks like it could be even bigger under Carney than it was under Trudeau. We have rising unemployment, a crisis of jobs for our young people. Housing is still unaffordable, and Mr. Carney has so far kept the unsustainable immigration numbers that Justin Trudeau left behind, numbers that are overwhelming housing, health care, and jobs, that are dividing our country and breaking up any notion of integration. We need a Prime Minister who's fully focused on undoing the damage that the Liberals have done, not continuing that damage and focusing on his private interests. Conservatives stand ready to help. We will propose amendments to the ethics law that will make these changes that I have just called for, make them law rather than just good practice. We want this to be once again a country where the leaders work for the people, where hard work pays off, where government is on the side of everyday people who work hard, pay their taxes, and play by the rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre. Simon Tuck from National Post.
Hi, Simon.
You've had some time since the election to contemplate and think things over. Any plans to do things differently, either in terms of your team or your approach, anything like that?
Yeah, look, every election comes with lessons. We want to continue to work hard to reach out to people. We want people to know that, our mission remains the same. Our mission is to give people back control of their lives, to make this a country where anyone who works hard gets a good life, and that homes are affordable, our streets are safe, immigration works for Canada first. Those are going to be the things we focus on. At the same time, we have to ask how we can reach more people with that message. We know now, we ended up getting a tremendous result, 41% of the vote, an extra 2.5 million votes. But 41% might not be enough in the future. And so we have to ask, how can we expand even beyond that number and reach even more Canadians with our message? We need to present ourselves as a government of waiting. Yes, we'll do a great job of prosecuting as official opposition, but we also need to present ourselves as a government in waiting so that when the time comes, Canadians can feel confident in choosing us to lead the country forward. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Poilievre. Stephanie Levitz, the Globe and Mail. Nice to see you. Your party voted in favor of Bill C-5, and as I think you know, Mr. Carney has a meeting this week with First Nations leadership to go over their concerns with the bill. I wonder if you could articulate why you see the legislation as being respectful of Indigenous rights. You voted for it. And what, if anything, you think Mr. Carney ought to be doing to forestall, excuse me, the potential for protests or court challenges as this bill begins to be implemented?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Let me first say that C-5's far from a solution. It's better than nothing, but not by much. The logic, there's a very big flawed logic in the approach the Liberals are taking. First of all, they've put in terrible laws that block development. C-69, the anti-development law, C-48, the ban on offshore shipping, the emissions cap, the industrial carbon tax. And then they've acknowledged that those laws are terrible, so they've passed another law to go around those terrible laws for select projects. This may allow some projects to go ahead. Some is better than none, and that's why we agreed to vote for it. We wanted the possibility that something, anything, could get built in this country, which is not possible under the bad laws the Liberals put in place to begin with. So I don't want anybody to think for a second that we think C-5 is a solution. The real solution is to get rid of C-69, C-48, the emissions cap, the industrial carbon tax, and many more of these other terrible Liberal policies. Then and only then will the hundreds or even thousands of projects that need to go ahead have a free market in which to do so. Now here we are in this strange situation where the Prime Minister has to select these projects to go ahead. Obviously, the best way forward is to win First Nations buy-in. And what I would say is the best way to do that is to ensure that First Peoples benefit from the projects. We had a policy during the election campaign, which I continue to support, which allow businesses to divert a share of their federal corporate tax to the local First Nations on whose lands the projects go ahead. This would be own source revenue for First Nations to build schools, hospitals, clean drinking water systems, job training, you name it. And they wouldn't have to go back to Ottawa to ask for money from federal bureaucrats. It would come directly to them. So I think that is one example of how we can make these projects beneficial to First Peoples. And they want to participate. If you talk to many of the First Nations people across the country, they desperately want to prosper from our incredible resources, and we should work with them to do it. I also think the Prime Minister should set up shovel-ready zones in consultation with First Nations governments that have pre-permits so that projects can go ahead and that First Nations people can be part of them from the very start. I think our First Nations people can be the richest in the entire world. That should be our goal. And only with good policy and hard work can that happen. Thank you.
Okay, enough. You want me to share something with you that most people don't know? It's not like it's a secret. People just don't know. See, provinces have direct control over their resources, like oil, critical minerals, uranium, nickel, copper, iron ore, whatever. So each province has control over their resources. But the federal government has other tools at its disposal in order to assert its authority, but not direct control. They have legislative authority over things like the environment. So in order for the federal government to assert its authority, with regard to provinces in the Canadian system, the federal government has to do things in a roundabout way in order to apply taxation against things like oil or nickel or uranium or any of these resources. The federal government has some taxation authority with regard to those resources, but not direct control. This is why you get so much conflict between the provinces and the federal government, and in particular out in Alberta, where you have not only Canadian oil companies, but also US oil companies that lobby to have taxation based on carbon taxes rescinded or eliminated. It's because if they can apply pressure to say that to have the federal government's leverage taken away, it gives more or maybe even all of the control over resources to the provinces themselves, and in particular in Alberta. And so that means that these oil companies and the province itself, but the oil companies would then not be subject to certain kinds of taxation. They would potentially be privy to more profits and maybe even, and more than that, more autonomy over decision making. But it gets complicated because, of course, if you need to build pipelines, you have to go through other provinces. The point is, you see, the reason the federal government has some of these bills in place is because these pieces of legislation, while they appear to be there to protect the environment, if you really want to drill down into the motivation or the reasons for these pieces of legislation being passed, it's that they can then use that as a bargaining chip against the provinces in order to get some of the things that the federal government needs in order to run the country, in order to get the provinces to share the wealth with the rest of the country so that we have an actual country. If you don't have some of these tools of leverage in place for the federal government, then you could argue, as some people who want you to believe that Canada isn't a real country, you could say then that the federal government is useless because it doesn't have the ability to tell the provinces basically that they have to share. They don't have to pay their share of the taxes. And that's what's partly going on out in Alberta. Alberta is saying, screw you, we don't have to pay the taxes to you. We control the resources, and what you're doing with regard to these taxation policies and the carbon taxes it's unfair because we control the resources, not Ottawa. But that's how the federal government has some say, not all the say, but their say in what is going on with the resources, what goes on with the oil. And you see, the federal government also has some say over what can and can't be exported. There are other tools. It's just not direct control over the resources. So it sets up this conflict between the provinces and the feds. It's complicated, but that's the truth. That's why a lot of the things that you see happening with environmental legislation don't seem to make sense. It's because they're not really using the environmental legislation to protect the environment. It's to achieve other things that most people just don't understand. But they can't say it's not about the environment because they can't admit that that's why they're applying these taxes or pieces of legislation. So that's just that's the little secret that isn't really a secret that people just don't know. Just thought I'd share that with you. Hope that helps give you more perspective. I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We are back. So, in Quebec City, the Department of National Defense has clarified that the weapons, ammunition, and explosives seized in last week's RCMP arrests of 4 men linked to an alleged terrorism plot did not come from the Canadian Armed Forces. The statement issued today emphasized that the military, police, and Canadian Army are assisting the ongoing RCMP investigation, but no further details were released today. Let me just see if I have some images here for you. I believe we do. Yes, we do. Okay, so these are the images that were released by RCMP last week. Bring them up on the screen for you again. And there you have it. So these are some of the weapons that were confiscated. And the Canadian military saying they did not come from the Canadian military. So the 4 suspects, Mark Aurel Chabot, 24, Simon Anger Audet, 24, and Raphael Lagace, 25, all from the Quebec City area, and Matthew Forbes, 33 years old, of Pont Rouge, were arrested in the early morning raids on July 8th. The trio of Chabot, Anger Audet, and Lagace faced charges of facilitating terrorist activity, which carries a potential 14-year sentence. The Crown is opposing their bail, citing public safety concerns, with a 2-day bail hearing scheduled for July 24th and 25th. And of course, what we're looking at here is actual members, active members of the Canadian military being charged. And as you can see, these are not the kinds of weapons that you would use to go deer hunting. I've heard some people online defending what these guys seem to have been up to, saying that they just don't buy it, and they don't. But look at what these are. this is scary. What we're hearing from the authorities is that there was a plot to take over land or even all of Quebec City. So Matthew Forbes, meanwhile, has been granted release on $60,000 bail today, with conditions including house confinement, an electronic monitoring bracelet, and a ban on possessing weapons or explosives. Forbes, his wife, and his mother each pledged $20,000 toward his bail. He's also prohibited from commenting on his case online or to the media and must return to court September 12th. Interestingly, Forbes told the court that the RCMP overlooked one munition during a January search of his home, which authorities will now seize. So they missed something. And he disclosed it. The RCMP alleges the group was involved in ideologically driven extremism, aiming to forcibly seize land in the Quebec City area. Searches earlier this year uncovered 16 explosive devices. You don't need explosives to go deer hunting. 83 firearms, over 11,000 rounds of ammunition. That's a lot of deer if you're going hunting. And military gear. The suspects reportedly engaged in military-style training, including shooting and survival exercises. That in itself may not be illegal, but if you're doing it with prohibited weapons and building explosive devices, IEDs, improvised explosive devices, or whatever kind of explosive devices they have, you don't need bombs to go hunting. So we'll see what goes on with the court case. Here's some more of the weapons that they had in their, allegedly in their possession. Yeah, see these handguns? See the size of that one right there on the far left? Like, that is one serious piece of hand gunnery. I'm no weapons expert, but wow. Wow. This is serious. Yeah, I'm not hitching my wagon to this one. I'm not, no defense on any of this from me. Nope. And here's some of the tactical gear and other equipment that they seized as well. In addition to that, at least one of these guys was involved or has been involved or continues to be involved or owner of a company that sells tactical gear, like night vision goggles, things like that. Has been for some time, and the company's still operating. Let me see if I can find you and show you the company that they were involved with here, allegedly. Although I don't think it's so alleged, because it is, the ownership is, I think, public information. Yeah, so this was, what's the name of this company? Northern something or other. I probably shouldn't be slowing down like this to find this information for you on the fly. I just think it's sort of, I think it is an important little sidebar piece of information. Okay, you know what? I'm going to take a little tiny break here, and I am going to show you. I'm going to find this and show it to you. Yeah, let me see if I can get it for you. Hang on. I'll be right back. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Yeah, so it was Forbes, and he is listed as one of the executives, I think even the president of this company, which is Northern Tactical Defense. It was a company established back in September of 2023, I believe, and they sell all this kind of like military style or tactical equipment, night vision goggles, the NTD UNVB V2 binocular night vision starter kit for $5,000. So while these are not weapons, you can buy this stuff. And obviously I would say some of this stuff has got to be military grade. Who are we? Northern Light Instruments, Inc. is a Canadian company specializing in high-quality night vision and thermal devices. We provide advanced optical technology to enhance visibility and safety in low light and challenging environments, serving clients in the defense, security, and outdoor industries. And we build, assemble, and service night vision devices in Canada, Quebec. Our mission at Northern Tactical Defense, our mission is to provide exceptional service and high-quality products to all our clients. We are dedicated to helping our customers navigate the fast-paced and ever-changing market of night vision and thermal technology. By combining excellence, innovation, and integrity, we ensure our clients receive the best solutions and support, empowering them to operate with confidence and clarity in any situation. Well, what would you use this stuff for? Camping. Or hunting deer in the dark. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Draw your own conclusions. The RCMP is alleging this group is involved, as I say, in ideologically driven extremism. And that they were aiming to forcibly seize land in the Quebec City area. It would be easy pickings, I would say, since, people up there or whoever is supposed to be defending that area probably would just be sitting around doing nothing. And then you'd have a bunch of guys show up with tactical gear and military grade weapons. And so we're taking over. Okay. Yeah. So earlier this year, and these are searches that resulted in these confiscations earlier in the year. So 16 explosive devices, 83 firearms, 11,000 rounds of ammunition. And I'm hearing people say, what's wrong with that? It's okay. Why can't they? What's the big deal? Yeah, it's a big deal. We'll see. We'll see where this goes. I'm interested to see the evidence. And that will come over time. A lot of stuff we're not hearing about yet. So also, wildfires, still a big issue. We've seen complaints from U.S. politicians, in particular some Republicans, complaining about Canada not doing more with regard to forestry management, accusing Canadian government of, through neglect, allowing these wildfires every summer to burn out of control. And that's affecting air quality, not only in Canada, but on the other side of the border, on the U.S. side. We're going to go to this news conference in Manitoba, where they bring us up to date. They're going to bring us up to date on the wildfire situation out there. Here we go. And Manitoba. This is Kristen Haywood,
Fire Service with Natural Resources and
Assistant
Indigenous
Deputy
Futures.
Minister.
I'll start off by giving a bit of a snapshot of where we're at today in terms of fire activity. As of today, there are 122 active fires burning in Manitoba. We've had 297 fires to date, and the 20-year average for today would be 217. Fire danger is moderate to high across the province today. We have a number of fires still impacting or with the potential to impact communities. So I'll just run through a list and some updates that we have on those. I'll start in Garden Hill. Fire North 79 remains out of control. Resources have been assigned and have been making some progress there, though it has been a bit challenging just due to smoke conditions and some pretty intense fire activity there. Work has been done to set up valley protection in the community and protect the hydro substation as well. Over in the Lynn Lake area, Fire North 2 continues to look really good. We're beginning some reclamation work and working on just addressing the few hotspots that remain on that fire. The main concern for Lynn Lake remains Fire North 42, which is south of the community. And that fire is estimated to be around 12,500 hectares. Crews are working east along the north part of that fire just to help secure the hydro corridor, which remains the main concern that can be impacted from that fire. Power is still on in the community as of this morning. In the Leaf Rapids area, there are 5 fires in the vicinity of Leaf Rapids. But the good news is that that community did receive precipitation yesterday, and most of those fires did exhibit fairly low fire activity as a result. North 26 remains about 7 to 9 kilometers southwest of the community. North 47 along Provincial Road 493 to South Indian Lake did show some growth, but it's all been in a direction away from the community and away from the road. Fire North 112, south of the Rattan Mine, is a newer fire in that area, but it is under control. Fire North 113 is approximately 8 to 10 kilometers northwest of Leaf Rapids. It's about 90 hectares, and we're assessing options to action that fire. And Fire North 119 is in the proximity of Churchill Lodge, and we are assigning resources to that fire. In the Thompson area, that fire is just over 163,000 hectares. That's Fire North 61. We've had good weather there for firefighting in recent days, and we've been able to make some really good progress. Building dozer guards, working any hot spots along the highway. And so we're really pleased with the progress we've been making in that area. Moving to the Gillam to Tasqueyac Cree Nation area, we're making good progress in the community of Split Lake. There is a new fire that we're watching in the York Landing area. We'll be assigning resources to that one today. In Cross Lake, Fire 5 continues, to be around the same size as it has been. There was some concern about impacts to the community of Woboden or Highway 6 from portions of that fire, and at this time the fire is not posing a threat to either of those. I'll move into the West region, focusing on the Snow Lake area.
Okay, we're not going to stick with this because it's just on and on and on. And this is every day. But every summer we have this in Canada, and I'm not sure. Some of it's arson, some of it's natural causes. Some of it is lightning. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories that spin up around this stuff too. And now there's U.S. pressure being exerted on Canada. It seems like Canada is under fire from the U.S., under fire because of the fires. We'll just have to keep watching and waiting to see what's going on. You know who else is under fire? Pam Bondi. The controversy surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein files continues to wreak havoc within the MAGA base, President Donald Trump's MAGA base, with prominent voices like Tucker Carlson now fueling outrage over Attorney General Pam Bondi's handling of the case. And the Epstein Files saga has sparked a firestorm among Trump supporters, with many accusing the administration of a cover-up after the Department of Justice at FBI released a memo last week stating, of course, that there is no client list of Epstein's associates and confirming his 2019 death as a suicide. Even Dan Bongino came out and said that, and he's now potentially going to step down as assistant deputy FBI director. So the backlash has intensified as of today, and a lot of this intensifying because of Tucker Carlson leading the charge on that front. And Carlson actually spoke with NBC News and criticized Bondi for making ludicrous claims, his words, on cable news, particularly her February statement on Fox News that an Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk. And Carlson argued in the interview on NBC that Bondi's failure to deliver on promised transparency has caused the current outrage, stating, again, quote, rather than admit the Justice Department doesn't have much relevant information about Epstein's sex crimes, Bondi made claims she couldn't back up. He further suggested on his podcast that Bondi might be protecting U.S. and Israeli intelligence agencies, claiming it's obvious, he says, the intel services are at the center of this story. So, yeah, MAGA is in meltdown mode. Donald Trump trying to minimize the damage. He's in damage control mode. And then today, late in the day, just before, about an hour before we came on for tonight's broadcast, Pam Bondi fired the DOJ's senior ethics attorney without warning or reason. And in the notification that was sent out, she actually misspelled the senior ethics attorney's name. Here, I've got the letter, the release. Here it is right here. Let me see if I can read it. This memorandum provides official notice that you are removed from your position of Director, Department Ethics Office, Ethics Officer, Justice Management Division, and from the Federal Service, effective immediately. Pursuant to Article 11 of the United States Constitution and the laws of the United States, your employment with the Department of Justice is hereby terminated, and you are removed from federal service effective immediately. If applicable, you may have a right to file an appeal of this removal with the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board within 30 days of the effective date of the removal action. For more information on how to file an appeal with the MSPB, please visit, and then they have the website sitting right there. And it's a memorandum for Joseph W. Tyrell, Tirrell, but she misspelled Joseph. She spelled it Jospeh. So she inverted the P and the E. Typo, or just doesn't know how to spell. I'm not sure which. But Pam Bondi under fire, and maybe it's the stress of the job resulting in spelling mistakes in dismissal memos that go out. And we don't know why. But they've got problems over there for sure. And Donald Trump trying to say, he said, what's going on with my boys? He said yesterday, because you have this pushback, and it's still the trending subject on Twitter, on X, as you can see here. Mario Nawfal tonight. There it is.
Has stated that apparently the Trump administration will release more files related to the Epstein case. She said that in the Betty Johnson show. And so that's something that we wanted to bring up. But, this breaking news from Ghislaine Maxwell follows what we saw earlier in the weekend on Friday and now, in which there was a lot of tensions within the Department of Justice and the FBI leadership, right? There was conversations that Dan Bongino was going to resign if Pam Bondi still stays in the AG's office. the Attorney General, President Trump, made it clear that he has full faith in Pam Bondi. And then he even went on Truth Social to make a post basically saying, why are people continuing to talk about the Epstein files? There is no additional information. And if anything, this is a Democratic plot to split MAGA. We saw in Turning Point USA, actually during our last live stream, I remember showing it here to our panelists, where I think it was Laura Ingraham was saying, to the audience, to a lot of MAGA, as Turning Point is a key component of that, highlighted, if you're upset about this, please, applaud or boo if you're, and the room was heavily against it, and there was clearly a split on that. So with that actual point, David, let me go to you, my fellow co-host for this episode, and say, are you seeing the same? It does look like MAGA is not pretty happy right now.
Well, I was at the Turning Point event this weekend in Tampa, Florida, the Student Action Summit. Great event. But yeah, the thing everybody was talking about this weekend. I mean, look, when you're at a conservative event, you have all the big pundits, you have a lot of the politicians, and you can kind of get a feel for what's kind of trending, And I did a bunch of shows, and the number one, everyone, Epstein. I mean, it was nonstop. And so this definitely is consuming MAGA at the moment. That being said, let me kind of back up and go forward, because the news has been crazy over the weekend. Don't forget, over the weekend was when the news dropped or just before the weekend, that Dan Bongino had this big fight with somebody in White House. They thought initially it was Pam Bondi, but then it turned out to be Susie Wiles, apparently, according to some reporting. He storms out. Basically, it's like Pam or me. Then we get additional information, this Maxwell supposedly willing to talk to Congress. And then, of course, a few minutes ago, the Laura Trump thing. It's almost like this story won't die. And you say, why? Is it the Democrats trying to keep it in? The Democrats are talking about Medicaid still. I don't know. This story is going to have legs, I think, because the messaging has been sort of inconsistent. So when you play that game, you remember Mad Libs, that you pick up that little book and it has blanks in it and you put in the funny words and at the end you have a totally different story. I think what we're seeing is a real life Mad Libs play out where they're not really sure what the messaging is on this. I think eventually the messaging will become a little bit more consistent and we'll have a better understanding about what's going on. But here's the reality. A lot of people are suggesting we should have a press conference with Pam Bondi. My answer to that is, if you have no answers, what's the point of holding a press conference? And I do think this weekend, when Trump doubled down on his support for Pam Bondi, I do believe his support is authentic. I don't think his support for Pam Bondi is because he's engaged in some sort of cover-up. It's possible that if these files existed, they're probably gone. But nevertheless, Trump has wanted to move on from this because it's distracting from so many big wins. And so to kind of bring it full circle and to get it over to the panel, you do have to wonder, what is these Epstein files? What is Laura Trump now out there saying? Because somebody's making a phone call around. What are you talking about, Laura? What are the files she's referring to? And even Maxwell, she was talking about client lists. She's suggesting that she will testify to Congress who was on the quote-unquote client lists, right? If she does, by the way, that'll probably be in a closed-door session. Nobody will find out what it is because of the prejudicial nature of the testimony that can come out of that without any actual investigations or indictments. But that being said, man, I don't know. I think this Epstein thing won't die. I think the people that don't want it to die don't want it to die for very specific reasons. And with that, let's see what the panel says.
And actually, David, let me because in the last episode we had, I know we had Josiah, and I think that is a perfect point in how you did it, because let me direct the first for his initial reactions to Josiah, because when you look at the Trump Truth Social post that happened, it was the first time he was, quote, ratioed, where there was basically more comments than, I don't know what they call it, reposts? Truth posts, whatever, or likes.
Retruths. On truths, it's retruths and comments and likes. Yeah.
Retruth. Thank you. And if you looked at it, people were furious. Yeah. And so, Josiah, I think let me ask you this, to David's point, this won't die. Let's be real. There was major news today in a geopolitical sense. Trump's with NATO Secretary General Mark Carney, basically more aid to Ukraine, saying 50 days, if not secondary sanctions against Russia, endorsing Lindsey Graham's sanction package. like in the international geopolitical sense, now the U.S. is doubling, if not tripling down into Ukraine, but that is not carrying any weight. And it looks like one of the main reasons the Epstein case is not over is, if anything, I would argue, much more on the conservative media and the MAGA base than really anywhere else. So, Josiah, how can Trump move on from this if his base and the Republicans, conservatives, Turning Point USA are saying Epstein, Epstein, Epstein?
He can just wait them out. I mean, the reality is that there's a whole influencer grift economy, which is really heavily rooted in pitching this sort of Gnostic online cult. I have secret knowledge about the doings of the elites and the pedophiles, and I'm going to pitch that to you. Sign up for my Substack for $10 a month. And these people, to have it turn out that the documents they claimed existed for all these years actually either were tampered with, destroyed, some sort of corruption happened. I honestly think if Epstein really was a member of an elite global cabal and they were able to murder that guy inside of a Bureau of Prisons, maximum security holding center, the idea that those people could then delete files and get rid of stuff they didn't want, very plausible. So, I think right now it just reveals there's a lack of seriousness among much of the commentariat. It's not a real issue. It's not going to be a 2026 campaign issue, I don't believe. I think right now what you're seeing is there are big political things happening. Trump is right to be mad that it's distracting from wins that he's delivering on his agenda. And ultimately, Epstein isn't about Epstein. It's about the faith that the American people have in institutions and their leadership. Under Biden, we saw a massive decline in legitimacy among major institutions. Now that Biden is out, the way to recover that legitimacy is by delivering results for the American people. Donald Trump has done that in the big, beautiful bill. He's doing it on immigration. There are ongoing fights in foreign policy and law and order, which will continue to draw attention. But if Trump delivers on those promises, then this story is going to die. And let me tell you this right now. If Pam Bondi wants to save her skin, she should go and arrest Anthony Fauci today. And I guarantee you we'll be talking about something else. And I think that would be better for the country as a whole.
David, I think that's I was interested when I saw this because I saw a lot of people reacting, some eyebrows. And if it's okay with you, I want to go to the first one that I think had a more visceral reaction to that. Jason.
Well, real quick, Stefan, if I may, I want to comment on that because it was actually a brilliant point, the waiting it out thing and the other topics that come up, because that is exactly, I think, why the administration has been kind of quiet on this. People will get it's almost like you can't undo if you make a mistake. Now, I think mistakes were made. Again, that phase one release, I think certain things weren't handled the best way. I think the smartest thing you can do now is not make any more mistakes and simply wait it out, because I agree. The only thing that becomes a 2026 issue is further mistakes relating to this issue. But yeah, Anthony Fauci, that was discussed today, that they're looking into him now, and that really would pivot the conversation. But with that, let's go over who did you want to go to, Stefano?
I feel like Jason had the most visceral disagreement with that statement, so I'll go to Jason for his initial comments.
Cool.
First of all, let me agree with a portion of what he said. I think the reason that this story isn't going away is because a lot of his base, this was their first taste of, a reality conspiracy amongst billionaires and their associates and high political figures, Holly weirdos, and pedophiles. Okay. And through that, a lot of them bought into the QAnon sense. They think white hats are coming, fairy tales and unicorns, and Trump is Superman. That's not reality. What really actually happened was it was through the outcry that an intelligence asset and his team, basically after being caught in Miami, okay, an arms dealer, all right, they tried to bifurcate it with just Ghislaine Maxwell and him. And now there are all these other distractions. We've talked about how, the Diddy case is not the same, but they've tried to make it into the same. People want to talk about things that they cannot prove. There are a ton of documents right now on Court Listener that anybody can look into. And I would say this, if you want to understand how these networks work, and one in which Epstein was more than likely a part of in the 80s, look into the BCCI banking scandal, because it encompassed all of this. And a lot of people don't understand that the current Epstein Victims Fund is mainly through JP Morgan Stanley and their internal emails. And furthermore, Nick will probably talk about this. If you wanted that money, if you were good enough to actually be a victim of Epstein, that they deemed that you could get this, you have to sign non-disclosure agreements. Okay, so you ask why people can't talk about that. Remember, we haven't had any criminal investigations, let alone successful prosecutions, into any high-level government figures or those assets in the past 4+ decades. And if the people find out that the last time we did Iran-Contra, Epstein was an integral part of that with his buddy Adnan Khashoggi, who mentored him and was a part of that, who was doing business with Epstein in the 80s, that will be a huge scandal amongst the blackmail and the foreign intelligence. Again, when you look at Iran-Contra, it was Israel that was getting the weapons from Eastern Europe and then shipping them down. It's a proxy network. And I'll leave it at that because I don't think they can wait this one out. They can pivot, like David said, to something else people are very upset about, Anthony Fauci. But this story will continue to live on because forget about the FBI documents or other intelligence documents. There's a paper trail on this guy that's out there. And it's only because of that paper trail and people like Nick who got the Black Book published and the flight logs published back in 2015 that we've even gotten this far, gentlemen.
But let's talk about that, right? So 2015 flight logs are published, right? The information from the Black Book or whatever. So there's information out there. There's been investigations. 2 people sit in jail. At what point, though, is it enough? Like, I understand that they want names and they want people to pay. But the thing is, what this administration has told you, and we've talked about this on so many shows, is that this administration said, we have given you everything we have. We don't have anything else. This investigation is closed at this point. And then from here, though, it's not that that nothing can be done. Congress has the power to investigate. They can create evidence. There's a suggestion that evidence was created and possibly destroyed by previous administrations. I don't know if that's true or not. But what I'm suggesting is if the evidence doesn't exist to put anybody else in jail, well, now you have to find the evidence, and that means Congress can investigate. That means people can do FOIA requests if they think the government is holding information and not releasing it. There's other ways to go and try to find information, but the problem is at the end of the day is you have people begging and screaming for something that's impossible to get at this point, and if they're never going to move past it until they get something that at the moment is impossible to get, I just don't understand where the energy is going. Yeah, I'm not sure who said can I jump in on this, but yeah, absolutely.
Brian.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, David. So a couple things on what you specifically said, but I kind of try to divide this up into 3 buckets. There's the conspiracy intel bucket, there's the this case bucket, and then there's the victims bucket. And I'm kind of sad that I'm the 5th person to speak, and I'm the first person to mention that these victims have a stake in this too, dead and alive. And the idea that we're going to just look away and move on with no accountability for those victims, I think that's wrong. But here's a fact, okay? We know there's information that the administration has that they haven't made public. And the reason we know, there's many reasons. One reason we know is that they handed out binders to influencers that had documents that Biden had released that still had redactions in them. So at a minimum, they could release those documents unredacted. Now, I will tell you, as a constitutional lawyer and a prosecutor, there's a lot of reasons why you might not want to do that. But the one thing they cannot honestly say is there's not more information. We know there is.
Well, that's true. And that's a good point. But you're exactly right. The information that's there, and I agree with you, the accountability for the victims, that's what everybody wants. Obviously, there's a lot of people that's exactly what this is about. There was kids, there was minors, and people want justice. There's probably no more offensive thing that you can do in society than do something like this to a child. And it is really the ultimate sin. But that being said, people do want accountability. But is it on Trump if he doesn't have the ability to deliver that accountability? Does it all fall on him? Remember, Jeffrey Epstein's been doing this for decades. And so it almost seems unfair in a sense that the buck is somehow stopping with Trump. And I think, though, and I understand the counter argument to that is going to be, well, why did he say he was going to release it if he didn't have it to release? Maybe he thought he had something he didn't. But to release the unredacted things, Brian, and I agree with you, who knows what names are in there that can't be released for the various reasons that people can take it upon themselves to assume that just because something appears in those files that suggests that they've done the worst thing in the entire world, and that might not be the conclusion that you can lead to in there. So, but it's an excellent. I understand your point. Yeah.
Can I ask also another follow-on question to Brian though, because it's something I wanted to ask you. I think I heard you in a space yesterday, but you said it to right now. You kind of alluded to kind of the intel conspiracy, right? And you kind of alluded, and I think this is kind of what Jason was saying about this aspect of Jeffrey Epstein being an intel asset. I've been in a live stream. I've been very skeptical of that claim, and that's the reason why there's kind of either a cover up or something's hidden. From your experience, would you believe that Jeffrey Epstein would fit the mold of an intelligence asset, even for blackmail purposes? Why did you say that to you feels that's like more of a conspiracy theory when a lot of people would say, I think this is the reason why they haven't released more, because he was a CIA, Mossad, or whatever plant, and they're trying to cover that up?
So I think you want to separate U.S. intelligence agencies and foreign intelligence agencies. And I'm not commenting on what a foreign intelligence agency might do. I'm not saying they're guilty. I'm not saying they're innocent. But what I know for sure, having served in the CIA under Reagan and Clinton and Bush 43, is that one, and first of all, there is absolutely no history since the Church Pike Committee hearings in the 70s of the CIA or any other U.S. intelligence agency ever extorting or blackmailing anyone, period, full stop. No evidence. I'm not saying it's impossible. I see your eyes roll, Jason. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying there's no evidence, number one. Number two, I have both written presidential findings on intelligence operations, and I've received them when I was working for Condi Rice. Any operation like this, where you are going to recruit a U.S. citizen to be a covert agent for decades, would have been reported not once, not twice, if you go back to the 80s, 8 times to 8 different administrations and 8 different Congresses. And this is the United States. This is a partisan environment. No chance that doesn't leak. You have to imagine a conspiracy of 8 presidents and 8 times 8, 64 members of Congress at least. I don't buy it. Number 3, if this was a thing, and if there was this conspiracy that could reach into a federal prison and have an inmate murdered, they certainly would have murdered Ghislaine as well. And here's one last thing, and I'll ask, and you can ask me anything about here's another thing too, sorry. The Southern District of Florida, like all federal courts, has the ability to run criminal trials when there is CIA or other classified information involved. There's a federal law that does this. It's called the Classified Information Procedures Act. I litigated 3 cases in the Southern District of Florida under this law. So the idea that even suppose he was an intelligence asset, which I don't think he was, all these cases still could have been tried. And Acosta's bullshit that intelligence told him not to do it doesn't work that way. Last point. If a member of Congress or the Senate wants to conduct what we in the intelligence business call an ops test today, they could go, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Hakeem Jeffries could go to the federal penitentiary in Tennessee or send a staffer, ask to visit her, and if the government blocks that, you're going to know a lot.
So with that, let me go to somebody that might, I assume, because and I know there's a lot, so we want to go. So let me go to Dave. I think you might disagree with that based on some of the reactions and all that. And look, I'm all for it, man. So take it away.
So I can't categorically say that Epstein was Mossad, but I think the most plausible explanation was that he was either a Mossad asset or connected to Mossad in some way, and that's just from his associations with Ehud Barak, who lived on his property, visited about 30 times, his connection with Robert Maxwell, the most prominent spy in Israeli history, was given a state funeral on it, and Alex Acosta's famous statement. I don't have to go into that. A lot of us know that, but I'll just say this cover-up seems to be a bipartisan affair. For all the theatrics brought about by the Trump administration and his supporters, saying that Trump would be the white knight to bring prosperity and transparency into Washington, it doesn't look to be the case. This is a rift in MAGA. You're seeing it play out right now, more so, I think, than the schism with Musk and the Iran strike, actually. And David was so right, David, when you said that the The Democrats' response to this is to talk about Medicaid. They have the silver bullet against the Trump administration right now, and it's to talk about a sex trafficking ring that involved the most prominent people in government. But they had it in Trump's first term too at the beginning, but instead they relied on the Russiagate hoax and all the absurdity that came with that. So here's what I'll say to round this out. Dan Bongino, if you have a problem with Bondi and how she's handling this, or Wiles, be a hero, be a whistleblower, and tell us. Because if Bondi goes down and we still don't have answers, nothing changes. People are going to clamor about this. I think Bondi is something of a red herring in this. And last thing I'll say is that the client list and the death information, things regarding that are still ambiguous, are important. But the real elephant in the room, the thing that everyone wants to know, that's probably the most important, is which intelligence service or services did Epstein work for? They didn't even address that in the memo. So that's where I'll end. Thank you, guys.
You know, there was a great interview that we conducted on Mario's channel with John, I think you pronounced his name Kiriakou. He was a former CIA analyst, and I know Brian's like, no, but it was actually a really intelligent discussion about how he could have been an asset from Assad and the reason for it. And it was a very interesting discussion. I recommend you going and checking that out on Mario's channel. It was a great interview. It was on, I believe it was Friday.
Hey,
but to your point.
Sorry, just real quick. Sorry. People can go to my timeline. John Kiriakou himself said that what he did in exposing his fellow agents was immoral and lies. He swore to that when he got sent to prison. So believe him if you like, but I don't.
Well, I'm not saying believe him or not. I'm just saying if you want to hear his take on it, is an interesting interview. But but that being said, I want to pivot back to your point, Dave. I think the reason why the Democrats are talking about Medicaid, though, and not using this quote unquote silver bullet is twofold. One, as I think it might have been Brian who made the point early on, or it might have been Jason, and it was a good point. They're not going to be talking about this in 2026. And so they're really pivoting for the 2026. And by hitting that Medicaid thing over the head and trying to get people to believe something that's not true, that is really why they're not touching this. The second reason is Biden would be just as implicated, and Democrats are just as implicated as Trump if you try to suggest that there's a cover-up. So there's no value here either. Everybody's like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Look, Trump just even mentioned trying to get to the bottom of it, and now this is squarely on his desk. Nobody wants to touch this thing because of the frustration around exactly what we're talking about. You're talking about cover-ups, if it's intelligence or not intelligence. Everybody has an opinion on it. It's dealing with very graphic subject matters. Nobody wants to touch this anymore. It's the thing that won't go away. And like Trump said, why is everyone still talking about this? People are going to be talking about this forever. But I don't think the Democrats even want to touch it because they don't want fingers pointed their way either. But an excellent point. Cricket, I want to bring a female voice into this. What say you and everything you've heard so far? What we have, what we don't have, what you're expecting, what are your disappointments? What do you think?
Honestly, David, I'm having difficulty controlling my face when you talk because I just can't believe the takes that you have when you look at the Epstein case and you're like, oh, it's about messaging or it's about people don't care. Everyone cares. And I
didn't say people didn't care. I did not. I said it was a messaging problem. I didn't say people didn't care.
But Democrats are talking about it. The leadership and the people in Congress who honestly are probably implicated, they're not talking about it. And that's a problem. That is a problem that the American people care about and should still be talking about. And this is the one issue that this is where Trump has actually united the country, because I've been in MAGA spaces, I've been in liberal spaces, and everyone cares about the Epstein case. Everyone wants to know, because unlike what you're saying where, oh, there's just nothing to see here.
Hold on. Don't put words in my mouth, Cricket. I didn't say there's nothing to see. I didn't say I think everybody should be upset about. What I said is, very specifically, and it's recorded, what I said was, there might not be any evidence. They've given what they had to give. What more can he do, is what I said. And I said, if anybody wants, it is true. It's recorded.
Don't look at this anymore.
What? No, that's not what I said.
No, Cricket, let me go to you though, to that point though, because I think there's two ways to analyze. Because I would disagree. We have seen Democrats really push this against Donald Trump. We have seen Democratic members. We have seen. I even think the DNC created a bot on Twitter that literally it tracks if the case files have been written. And I think that is what's messaging. But I think there's two ways to analyze. When this first broke, when the AG Bondi released that memo that was leaked by Axios, and the first space we had here in the live stream, I said there's two explanations. It's either a cover-up number one, which I think everybody agrees one way or another the reasoning went, or number two, which I think is kind of what, in a way, just and David are alluding to, was they overpromised. They leveraged this political crisis, this lack of trust in the American people, because it's important to remember Trump was president during the first term. Like when this happened, this all happened under President Trump in the first term, right? This didn't happen under Biden. It was Trump. I think the problem is he would have known. He leveraged this for political reasonings. He managed a lot of the people that are now in, especially the leadership of the FBI, really ran on this. And I think when they got into the positions they're at and they looked at it, they're like, oh my God, we've been played and we've played our base. How do we escape from this? How do we escape from overpromising, saying there's all this going on, the list and blah, blah, blah. And now they just have nothing else to do to say there's nothing more. And either so it's either a cover up or they basically played their political voters in their base. And now they don't know how to cover up for it, or not cover up. That's the right term. They don't know how to pivot away from it because their base is the ones who are going to be the most adamant that there's definitely much more there, because they created that after 6 years. They created this notion of this deep secret, and now they can't walk away from that.
Yep. That's right.
I think you bring up a great point, Sitrep. And in addition to that, what we see is Trump did not say, we overpromised after looking into it. This is what we have. This is what we don't. What he said is, why are we still talking about it? It was dismissive. It completely undermined what was happening in the country. And it made it seem like, all right, why is there a distraction here? So if there was some forthrightness, then maybe we could get past it. But at this point, people want answers, they want accountability, and they want to know where that's going. And honestly, I consider myself a moderate. I am seeing that from both sides of the aisle, at least from the people. The politicians, I'd like to see more outrage vocally and publicly.
Let me ask you though, Cricket, and then I'll throw it over to.
Okay, enough of that. It is interesting to see how quickly this issue touches people in very high places, not just within the United States, but internationally. You heard Jason Burmis make reference to Adnan Khashoggi. Do you know who that is? That's a Saudi Arabian businessman, an international arms dealer, known for his lavish lifestyle and extensive business dealings. He was born in Mecca to Mohammed Khashoggi, King Abdul Aziz Al Saud's personal doctor. He leveraged his family's connections to build this business empire. And in the 60s and 70s, he became a key intermediary between Western defense companies and the Saudi government. He brokered major arms deals with firms like Lockheed, Boeing, earning commissions reportedly up to $106 million between 1970 and 75. And his net worth peaked at about $4 billion in the early 1980s. These are big time players. Khashoggi founded Triad International Holding Company, which invested in hotels, real estate, other ventures across 5 continents. He was infamous for his extravagant spending, owning super yachts, private jets, a villa in Marbella, Spain. This is stuff that they accuse Zelensky of doing and owning and having. But no, he didn't have. Zelensky doesn't have the financial means. This guy, yeah. So yeah, the villa in Spain where he hosted lavish parties, where of course attended by celebrities and politicians, and his lifestyle earned him the nickname the Great Gatsby of the Middle East. He was implicated in all kinds of controversies, including the Iran-Contra affair. This goes back decades. Reagan, where he facilitated arms sales to Iran, faced legal issues like the 1988 arrest in Switzerland for concealing funds, though he was never convicted. And Khashoggi married multiple times. And then, if you you start connecting dots, that gets you to who? Jamal Khashoggi. Remember the journalist who was murdered? The Saudi journalist, dissident, author, columnist for the Washington Post and the Middle East Eye. He was also the general manager and editor-in-chief of Al Arab News Channel and served as editor for the Saudi newspaper Al Watan, where he promoted progressive views. So Jamal Khashoggi had connections to Adnan Khashoggi because he was Adnan Khashoggi's nephew, I believe. And Jamal Khashoggi, he's the journalist that was murdered back in 2018, in the fall of 2018, inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, by a 15-member squad of Saudi operatives. He was ambushed, strangled, and his body was dismembered and disposed of, with the remains never publicly recovered. Turkish authorities, through secret audio recordings, confirmed the premeditated nature of the killing. A 2021 CIA report concluded that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman approved the operation. And this became a scandal even within the United States. The murder drew international condemnation, though Saudi Arabia initially claimed it was a rogue operation. They later sentenced 5 individuals to death and later pardoned by Khashoggi's children in 2020 and 3 others to prison terms. There were critics, including UN Special Rapporteur Agnes Kalamard, dismissed a Saudi trial as lacking justice, arguing it failed to hold high-level officials accountable. Gee, it seems to be a theme, doesn't it? Anyway, Jamal Khashoggi's journalism career included covering major events like the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, interviews with Osama bin Laden. Isn't it interesting how this stuff all goes back to like big-time money, arms dealers, and then the Epstein stuff? Doesn't take much, does it? 6 degrees of separation, as they say. Everybody has a connection to everybody else. But they have a club. I'm not in it. I can assure you of that. Speaking of court cases, tomorrow we will be no doubt providing you with updated information on this universal ostrich farm, the open air bio lab in Edgewood, British Columbia, because the court case is scheduled for tomorrow. That whole thing where they got the stay on the second stay or delay on the culling of the ostriches out in British Columbia, the court case was expedited because of the nature of the case and the high profile nature of it. All of it centering around the detection of that unique strain of H5N1 avian flu, where they had 69 of the ostriches die from the infection, and then the CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, ordering the cull of the entire flock, which they were told that they have as many as 400 ostriches, although I can't really make out the real numbers of birds out there. Anyway, court case expedited for tomorrow. I think it's supposed to be a 1-day deal because they need to kind of get through this. The culling being challenged again in court for the second time tomorrow. And it has been a very strange, kind of weird, bizarre case. I can tell you too that the whole thing has attracted the most colorful of characters, not the least of which are political figures and celebrities like RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, who said, "Send them down to my farm in Florida. I'll take them." And then they declined, and I don't think that was a realistic offer anyway. But it's also, attracting some very colorful characters just politically within Canada. If you look here, here's Katie Pasitny on her Facebook post, just a prelude to tomorrow's court case, just posting saying that Canadians must have trust and confidence in their justice system. It's a strange post. I don't know why she would even say this, but let's continue to be the beacon of hope for the eroded trust within our organizations and flawed system. I don't know. It's a strange post calling for unity within the justice system. I don't get it. Then if you scroll down, just to show you the kind of people that the farm is attracting, this is somebody posting under the name Marxist Carney saying, sorry, being nice to the enemy, being the government, only leads to your demise. These are international criminals on an order of magnitude few can fathom. The WEF control us. They are satanic, Nazis, murderers. They torture babies and then drink their adrenochrome. They sacrifice and abuse babies for their Lord Satan. Okay. I'm not endorsing that statement, but it shows you who's kind of in their sphere of, in their community out there. Okay. So that's what's going to court tomorrow. I'm not saying everybody out there, like you've got a range of people with a range of views, and they had the big Farm Aid concert over the weekend, except it wasn't that big. I think they had 20, maybe 30 people who turned out, plus the people who came to kind of put on the concert, the musicians and the people with the trucks. I don't see how it was any kind of a revenue generator for them, but I think it was more a political move than anything else. Now, last night, we had Joseph Leonard on, which was a treat. Hasn't been on for a while. And we talked and debated even about the Superman movie because he had posted on our Rumble channel. He said, I hope it flops because I think it's too woke, but he hadn't seen it yet. And then after our discussion, he said that he was going to go see the movie. And I think he is going to go see the movie in its entirety. So when he does that, and I think it might even be as early as tomorrow because it's Popcorn Tuesday and it's a discounted day, and I think he's going to go see it. So we might get Joseph back on briefly tomorrow night to further discuss the Superman film, which has been very controversial because Joseph, after our discussion, said, well, Rick, maybe I will go see it. Maybe it isn't as woke as some of the critics have made it out to be. And I encouraged him to go see it. I encourage you to go see it as well. I am of the opinion that it's one of the best Superman movies ever made. I think it's unfortunate that people are viewing it through this this lens of wokeism without even having gone to see it. People are judging this movie by its poster, and I think it's unfair. It's incredible script, and it meant more to me going to see it than you know. You know, it did very well. I went to see this movie with my wife. It did good box office over the weekend, $217 million worldwide, $122 million in the United States, making it one of the strongest movie openings of this summer. And the reviews online are 93% positive among those who actually have seen the movie. A lot of people just dismissing it out of hand because of these critics who have hammered on the movie from the conservative side, particularly from Fox Television and Kellyanne Conway and Jesse Waters. I don't think either of them saw the movie, but they lambasted it, just saying it's woke. So I think that has hurt the box office. I think it would have been a much bigger opening had this controversy surrounding wokeism not surfaced. And of course, it all started because the director and writer of the movie, James Gunn, said that Superman is an immigrant. And then we've got the immigration issue front and center politically within the United States right now, and ICE and the deportations and concerns about the about due process and unfair deportations and, you know, unfair accusations, judge, jury, executioner, alligator, Alcatraz, all of these issues. And we see paramilitary forces and the National Guard, you know, running through the streets of Los Angeles, all that stuff. Anyway, all I can say is I had a good time at the movie, and I'm glad that I went with my wife. And I'm going to share something personal with you. Years ago, when I met my wife, I think I've told you a little bit of this story, but I'm going to share this with you as I tee up the end of the program here tonight. I met my wife in a clothing store. And back in those days, I actually reviewed films for a student radio station. Actually, it was originally on a student radio station. And then the guy that I did those shows with for about a year and a half, 2 years maybe, we moved it from the student radio station to an actual commercial radio station in London, Ontario. And so we did that for about a year. And we were on the commercial station at that time, right? Because I was working at television. And I met my wife. I was going to see a movie to review for the radio station. And before I went to the movie, I stopped in at this clothing store, and my wife was working there at the time. I don't want to speak too loudly because she might hear me sharing this secret story. So I met her, and I was looking at shirts, but I had to go to the movie. Right after the movie, it was an early show. I couldn't get her out of my head. So I went back to the store before they closed. And I went in and I bought a shirt at this clothing store where she was working. And I worked up the courage to ask her out on a date. And she said yes. And I was like, yeah. So anyway, we went. So what did we do? Of course, we went to a movie. I took her to dinner, and then I took her to a movie. And then after the movie, I took her home to her mom's place. And I was just, I'm just, you got to give me permission because I am not going to be too forward. And so there I am. I'm standing at the door of her mom's place. And I was like, well, they had a really good time. Gee, thanks for the date. And she stood up on the step and she grabbed me and kissed me. And so that just made my life. It literally did. And so, you see, going to the movies with my wife, it's a big deal for me because it just brings back all those memories. We don't go very often anymore. So going to see Superman, that was a big deal because we went, and that was an important night. And I'm glad that I took Saturday off to do it. And I'd been working on this for a while anyway. So I've got this new song that I'm going to share with you tonight. It's called Open the Door. And it's because she hasn't even heard it yet, but I made this song for my wife. So I'm going to share it with her later tonight. And it's about going to the movies. And it was like, this is perfect, like the Superman movie. And I took her out. And it's about, it's just, this is, I wrote all the lyrics and everything. And it's about exactly that experience and how it was pivotal in my life and hers. It's about confidence. It's about being a gentleman. And it's about how she had to give me permission to kiss her for the first time. In fact, she kissed me. And with that, I leave you tonight with this song about that experience that continues. The journey continues. Love you guys. I'll see you all back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m., maybe with Joseph, and a little more talk about Superman and an ongoing review after he actually sees the film. I did. And brought back a lot of memories. I hope you enjoy this. Here it is, Maverick and the News Brothers. Open the door. She opened the door to my heart. Flip side.
asked her out with a nervous grin, heart pounding like a storm rolling in. She said yes with a spark in her eyes, and he dreamed of her 'neath moonlit skies. They shared a movie, popcorn, and a glance. Her laugh lit his world like a slow, sweet dance. At her mama's porch, his heart wished to soar, but the kiss he craved he couldn't explore. She stood on the stairs, opened the door, pulled him close, gave him something more. Her lips met his in the soft twilight, and love was born 'neath the stars that night. 40 years on, when the fire feels thin, she can still reach the heart within. Just stand on the stairs, open the door, and let love in like she did before. The years flew fast, kids grown and gone, just them now with the quiet of dawn. She misses his touch, the fire in his gaze, the warmth is faded in life's busy maze. They tried a new date, the same old show, popcorn and laughter, letting love grow at their own front door in the evening's glow. She searches for courage she used to know. She stood on the stairs, opened the door, pulled him close like she did before. Her lips met his, no need to pretend. Their love's a flame that won't ever end. 40 years on, the spark's still there. If she reaches out, if she dares to care, just stand on the stairs, open the door, and let love in forevermore. It's hard yet simple, this task at hand, to stir the flame in her gentle man. No words are needed, no perfect plan, just one kiss to show she still can. She takes his hand like that night long ago, steps up on the stair, lets her feelings show. With a gentle smile, she pulls him near, kisses him soft, wipes away the years. The past comes alive, their love's still true. The fires rekindled like the night they knew. She opened the door like she did back then, and found her forever, her gentle man. She stood on the stairs, opened the door, pulled him close like never before. Her lips met his 'neath starlit skies, and love came back with no disguise. 40 years on, she's found it again, the key to the soul of her truest flame. Just stand on the stairs, open the door, and let love in like she did before. Oh, stand on the stairs, open the door, let love in forevermore.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.